Hello, good evening. My name is Captain Stiff, otherwise known as Gareth. You can find me on Twitter at F3 League. And welcome everyone to America. Welcome to the Lone Star State Americas in Austin, Texas. Held since 2012. Austin, the latest circuit in obviously having featured on the F1 calendar, yet struggling to stick and struggling to really capture the imagination of the American audience. But the United States Grand Prix is a long and varied history. It's been staged, like I said, around 10 different venues since it was first included. That's in places such as Indianapolis, Phoenix, Watkins Glen, Riverside, but also we had quite short visits to Detroit, Long Beach and Las Vegas, of course, of the race in the car park. But Formula One came to Austin in 2012. That's the Circuit America, which is the first ever purposefully built circuit for Formula One, which Austin really hoped to benefit when it came to tourism. But the first Grand Prix in America was actually won by McLaren's founder Bruce McLaren, who won it back in 1959. And of course, the sport got a little bit of a boost going into the 60s and 70s by having two American world champions in Phil Hill in 61 and Mario Andretti famously in 78. Now, of course, famously, we'll just make sure we've got everyone ready on board here with their details. So it's going to be, my looks for it, ultra softs for everyone so far to set that fastest time out there. Lovely blue skies. And yeah, so I was saying, yeah, so there are talks of a second American Grand Prix potentially entering the calendar from the 2019 or possibly more likely 2020 calendar. That'll be at Miami, a more glamorous location that Liberty Media are hoping, as we'll just go on board with Joel V520 here, who's out on his outlap in the Williams. COTA, it's a 5.513 kilometre track. That's 3.42 miles. It's the 9th longest circuit on the calendar. Around 20 turns, with a distance to turn 1 of around 280 metres up that steep incline into turn 1. The longest straight, and the cars will be hitting top speed along that straight, is around just over 1,090 metres, which is 0.6 of a mile on the approach to turn 12, where the cars will be reaching around 320 kilometres at 199 miles an hour. They'll be doing full throttle for around 63% of the lap, with 54 gear changes per lap. That's around 1,512 over the race. And the circuit, of course, was built by the famous circuit designer Hermann Tilke, who, of course, has designed some famous circuits such as Abu Dhabi and Yas Marina, Yeongnam, which was in South Korea, and others around the world, such as the Bud, the circuit that we went to in India for a few years back in the late 2000s, I want to say, possibly early 10s. But anyway, the circuit was designed to emulate some of the more famous circuits around the world, such as the sweeping corners of Mackids and Beckett's, as you can probably tell in Sector 1 here around COTA, but also the long sweeping corner that was famed at Istanbul, which was also designed by Hermann Tilke. So the long turn towards the end of Sector 3 was inspired by that absolutely beautiful long left-hander at Istanbul. And there are several other corners on the circuit which take inspiration from other famous corners. There's Joel here on his outlap, and I will get to what happened last race and also the permutations when it comes to the championship challenge and what happens, because tonight potentially we can see a champion crowned if all goes the way of Game of the Best. But it would mean that Joel would have to have an absolutely shocking race for that to happen. So it'll be very interesting to see if Joel can hold his nerve tonight and maintain that challenge as we go into the final race of the season next week in Sepang, Malaysia. There's Joel here just coming into the third sector through the very, very tight corners. And what's actually very impressive is it's an electric mix of corners at the Circuit of Americas. And COTA has actually got more fast corners than Spa and more slow corners than the Hungaroring. So it makes the car setup very tricky, but also very interesting compromise for the guys design their setup? Do they design, or do they go for a more flowing setup as Joel comes across the line and looks like he may have invalidated that lap? So it's going to be a second flying lap on those ultra soft tyres for Joel if he's planning on it. So of course, Sector 1 here can be a real problem for the guys when it comes to track extensions, as we're on board here with Chiln Island coming down into onto the long straight. Sorry, just checking there, just checking coming out of turn levels. We got a yellow in Sector 2. I will scroll through and see if I can find one, and it is Mike SI in the Ferrari who's turned the car around as Merody 2 sets the first time of the session and puts himself on provisional pole as Mike gets that Ferrari pointing in the right direction. Scott with a 1:37. Now, COTA is actually one of 5 circuits on the calendar that is anti-clockwise from the start. So the guys may not be used to taking a left turn straight from the start. There's only a few others on a circuit that actually do that. That's Baku, Singapore, into Lagos and Abu Dhabi. So as Nicky goes top with a 130, well, no, Chill goes top 136.8 by the looks of it. So cracking lap there for Chill, who obviously missed the last 2 weeks after being away. So looking forward to seeing him back in the lobby and seeing what he can do. Can he make a dent on as Mike comes into the pit lane after that early spin? So Mike not had the best of time of it, as Joel does set a second time lap with a 136 flat. So really laying the benchmark down there for the guys, and with Game of the Best currently 0.5 of a second after his banker lap. It's once again, it's another absolutely stunning lap from Joel V520, who desperately needs to take points off of the Sauber driver who's currently lining up against him on the front row of the grid. Now, last race, of course, we were in Bahrain in the race in the desert, and Gamer took the win, but only after Joel, as Mystic Man picks up a 0-place grid penalty for a collision. So very interesting to see what that'll actually be for, as we'll just see if there's anyone else on a fast lap on board. Chill looking like he may be slowing down. We'll just see if Craig 8728 is out on circuit. He is in the Red Bull. Craig not had the best of seasons. He's admittedly said that he's looking to improve come the next game, next season for the 2018 game, as he crosses the line and puts it on 8th on the 4th row of the grid. We're 137.4. So Craig with the slowest time so far out of the times that have been set. He'll definitely be looking to improve that as we head on into the second time laps, if he can get that Red Bull back into the garage and back out with a fresh set of boots in time. But going back to Bahrain, it was Gamer that took the win after Joel crossed the line in first position, but after picking up an absolutely devastating penalty in the on the final lap after an absolutely breathtaking comeback, making that two-stop strategy work. He dropped down to third, and it was Gamer that took the win, with Jamie 6328 who took his first podium position in second. And Mero D2, after an early mishap and spin, I believe it was, came back to finish well placed fourth, which put him up into third place in the driver's standings. So Mero with a late charge up towards the top end of the grid with his decent results over the last 4 races, with a fourth, a third, a win and a fourth. So Mero definitely ending the season strongly, and that can't be said for our previous championship leader Nicky 9095, who's really struggled over the past 3 races with 2 DNFs in Japan and Hungary and a 9th place finish in Bahrain. As we'll just check to see if Chill's out circuit. He is, but it looks to be going slow at the moment. The guys currently on their out laps, ready to set those last late times and try and get themselves onto the front row of the grid and get anywhere near that absolutely storming lap of Joel's, as he's actually been joined on the front row. I've just missed it by Jamie 6228, who also sits at 136 flat, and currently 0.05 of a second behind Joel. So Jamie and Joel once again setting very quick times in qualifying, as they did last week in Bahrain. So looking to take the race to Gamer, and with the grid knowing that Gamer can potentially win the title tonight, do they all try and sandbag and possibly keep it a little bit further back at the start and look to attack Gamer and hope to take it to a last race of the season in Sepang, or is it a case of all guns blazing, trying to get as many points towards the end of the season as possible? So tonight obviously we're missing Stifler 1980 as well, who's missing his second consecutive race, which is a shame for Stifler, who was doing quite well in third position, but he's now dropped back to fifth on 50 points. But with Game of the Best sitting on 66 points, Joel 5 points behind on 61. Mero is 13 back on 53, with Nicky 9095 only picking up 2 points in the last 3 races, sits on 52, with Stifler in 5th on 50, and Chill, who's, like I said, back from his time away on 49 points. So still potentially can be anyone from the top 6 that can take the championship, but there would need to be an absolute catastrophic grouping of failures from Joel or Gamer for that to happen. But tonight the title can be won. If Gamer wins and Joel finishes 7th or lower, then Gamer is in second. Joel needs an 8th place position to stay in the hunt going into the next race, and hope that Gamer DNFs either DNFs or gets 1 point next week in Malaysia. Gamer can also win tonight, or win the title tonight, if he collects more than 7 points and Joel retires. But if Gamer retires, a 6th place finish for Joel will tie it up heading into Malaysia. So a lot of different scenarios on board tonight for the race victory and for the championship potential. So at the moment it's looking like it might be a battle between Gamer and Joel, with Gamer in pole position to take the championship with that 5-point lead. So Joel looking to, well, currently he's doing the best he can. He's put it on pole with Merody 2, currently now on 3rd position with 136 flat, sitting 100th of a second behind Jamie on the front row of the grid. So Mero with another good lap, as will go on board with Joel V520 as he comes down the long straight heading down towards turn 12. Has that DRS open. It's a slow braking point down into turn 12. We're going from 196 miles an hour down to 68 as round the tight stadium section of turn 13, 14 into turn 15, the tight hairpin. It's very easy to get the car sideways out of there, and then we go into turn 16, 17 and 18, the long sweeping turn that reminds people of the turn 8 at Istanbul. Kick it across turn 19 down to turn 20, down the hill to the lowest part of the circuit, lights up those rear tyres, crosses the line, and it's a 1:35.5 for Joel, so 0.5 of a second faster. And essentially he throws down that gauntlet and says, beat that, anyone else on the circuit. And currently Game of the Best sitting in 6th position. He could not improve his time, so Game of the Best not with a great qualifying session at all, so sitting way further back than he would like to. And he has said previously he just isn't getting the pace out of that Sauber that he was hoping. And currently it's Jamie 6328 who's the closest person to Joel, but still sitting 0.5 of a second behind. So we'll see what he can do coming into the third sector. It's 25.7 through his second sector, so not a bad time, but does look like he's done a long time here, so it may have been early mistake for Jamie earlier in the lap. We'll see if that's just a graphical error or not. As we'll go on board with Scott, who looks to have made a mistake. There was carbon fibre or dirt coming off of the car, and the McLaren's going very slowly as the car's coming across the line. We'll just check with Jamie. So yeah, it was a mistake earlier in the race, or earlier in the lap for Jamie, so he will start, unless Craig, who is the last one out on circuit, to set a fast time. But it doesn't look he's going any quicker. He's not, so that is all she wrote when it comes to the qualifying session, guys. And of course, if you are watching the stream, feel free to get involved. Send me your comments. Who do you think is going to win? What is going to happen when it comes to the start? Is Game of the Best going to make up those positions he needs to challenge Joel, or is Joel going to dominate a race once again like we've seen previously when he took the race victory in Great Britain? But Joel V520 is going to take pole position by 0.5 of a second to Jamie 6328. Mero D2 is going to pick up another good result in third, with Nikki 9095 fourth. Scott, that's Boy Better Know, in 5th position. Gamer the Best in the Sauber sitting in 6th, with Chiln Island in 7th. Craig 8728 is going to pick up 8th, with Mike back in 9th, and Mystic Man 22 did not set a time after that grid penalty showed up, so he will start on the final place on the grid, and that's in 10th position. So points up for grabs for everyone this evening, and they will definitely all be looking at picking up some points heading into the final race. But it's quite a difficult engineering challenge for the guys here tonight, and with quite a high number of slow corners around the lap, pushes the cars set up towards more maximum downforce. However, it's important to maintain a competitive top speed, because there's 2 long straights on which the DRS zones are located. The track can also be quite bumpy, which compromises the ride quality, so it's very tricky for these guys to get their setups works, as you see there. So Joel in first with 135.5, Jamie with 136 flat, Mero with 136 flat, Nikki back there with 136.2, Scott with 136.2, Gamer with 136.5, so 1 second behind Joel's time, so really not a good qualifying session there for Gamer. Chill in 7th, Craig 8th, Mike in 9th, and Mystic with his penalty did not set a time, so he will finish in 10th. As you can tell, when the drivers are really on it, it's the high-speed changes of direction, particularly through Sector 1 and through the complex of what feels like the maggots and beggets section of turn 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. Even into turn 8 and 9, it's just, you feel like you're forever turning left to right to left to right. The corners just, they're not quite equidistant between each other, so there's some points where you need to brake a little bit harder than each other at some point, as we've got a wet session, so that has really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons when it comes to the race setup. So the guys really need to bank on the fact that their setup is pretty much stable, because after setting quite those times on the ultra soft tyres, it's not going to mean anything, because by the looks of it, it's going to be a wet start to the Grand Prix. So starting on the intermediate tyres, and yes, just had that confirmed with me, so it is a wet race on intermediates, so we're not expecting it to go to full wet conditions at any point, so definitely intermediates. Possibly look towards, if the rain does ease off towards the end of the race, moving on to possibly the ultra soft or the super soft tyres, depending on how brave the drivers are feeling out there. Now, the trickiest part for the driver is probably up to turn 1, which the highest point in the race, and the highest point of the circuit of around 130 feet of the elevation changes between the final corner and the highest corner. That's turn 20 into turn 1, so 130 feet climb between the two. And the track here is quite wide. It's around 42 to 52 feet wide, so it's big enough so that it does fit that. But turn 1 will be very, very interesting, especially in this wet conditions going into the first lap. And it's that steep uphill climb, but the corner is actually level, so it forces the driver to brake and turn in over a crest, so it's easy to lock your front wheels. It's imperative to get a clean exit out of that turn as we go into the race. And the lights come on. We have 5 lights, and we have a jump start from Mike and from Craig at the Red Bull. It's really unfortunate, just jumped the lights ever so slightly there, and they're off. And it's Scott that's, well, it's a full ultra soft start for everyone, as it's the force injury has been turned around. And that looks like Nikki 9095 that may have been turned around, but it's Joel that maintains the lead going down into the first complex corners. You can see the spray coming up, and on those dry tyres, this is going to be really tricky for the drivers to make their way around. So it's Joel that leads it around, with Scott, who's made up a great few places off the start, but it is Gamer the Best who's put himself up into 3rd position. So Gamer from 6th to 3rd, really throwing himself up there. But these guys are going to have to do everything to keep these cars in a straight line as they head down towards the long straight at turn 11 for the first time. Joel kicking the rear end of that Williams out as he gets it straightened up and down the long straight, as Game of the Best now starting to look at the back of the McLaren of Scott going down the long straight into turn 12. Does he pull out from the slipstream? He does. So Game of the Best already up into second position. So not what Joel wants to see at all. Joel was hoping that people would hold him up, or potentially get caught up in a tangle earlier in the lap into turn 1, but it's not the case. Gamer has had an absolute rocket start, and he's now starting to come right up to the back of Joel as we head into the third sector around the long turns of 16, 17, 18, and then break down into turn 19 as we'll go back down. Chill and Mystic fighting over 5th and 6th position at the moment, and Chill looking at the back of sorry, it's Chill and Mero, I apologise, as Mero gets slightly out of shape in the Red Bull coming out the final turn, but Chill not quite able to do anything about it. Long climb uphill down into turn 1. Oh, as Chill just gives a little bit of a kiss to the rear enders. We've got a yellow flag, and it's Mike who's lost it in the Ferrari going into the pit lane. So Mike and Craig, as Craig just gets on the power a little bit too early coming out after serving his stop go penalty, or his drive through penalty, and unfortunately for Craig, as Mike has to pit on, and he puts on the hardest set of tyres, which is the soft compounders. It does look like the rain is easing off already, so as Craig out there will go back up on board and check out on the lead battle, and it's Game of the Best who's sitting right behind Joel going down the straight at turn 11 into turn 12, and does the sound pull to the inside and look at overtaking for the lead. He does he get it slowed down in time? Just about in time. So Game of the Best from 6th position in less than 2 laps has overtaken Joel and takes the lead of the American Grand Prix, and an absolutely electric start for Gamer, who had a shocking, as Joel really looks like he's struggling to keep that car in a straight line heading into turn 12 and 13, heading into 15, sorry, and the Williams needs to stay with the Sauber if he's going to have any chance of staying in this title fight heading into Malaysia next week. So it's really on Joel to make sure that he sticks to the back end of Gamer, just follows his line if he has to, and it may just be a case of, as Gamer sets the fastest lap with 152.2, it may be a case of who can set the better lap time as Chill comes in. Doesn't look like he's got any front wing damage, so is it an early strategy call? Oh, it looks like it may be a drive-through penalty for the Haas driver. And we'll just go quickly on board with Jamie 6328, who's sitting down in 7th position at the moment, looking at the back of Nicky 9095. Nicky not had the best of times over the last few weeks, and he's once again not looking overly inspiring here today, sitting in 6th, didn't have the best qualifying session, so Nicky just not quite the level he was at later in the season as he was early. As Scott now starting to look at the back of Mero, starting to look really racy as we go down into the second sector, and they come into turn 11, straighten up as Scott just about gets it stopped, but he's going to turn the car around. He's unfortunately just lit those rear tyres up ever so slightly, and the McLaren driver turns it around. He gets it pointing in the right direction, but he's going to need to watch out because those tyres are going to be like ice for the next few seconds, and he doesn't want to put his foot down too heavily because he will find himself spearing into the Armco barrier, which is in close proximity. As Jamie's still looking at the back of Nicky here, and with Mystic in the Renault not far in front of these two, so definitely potential for changes in positioning all through the race at the moment, as you can see just how tricky it is with all drivers struggling to get the power down on this damp track on the dry tyres. So very, very interesting to see how the strategy plays out later in the races. Obviously they were given the chance at the start of the race. Did they want to go for the intermediate tyres? But everyone's race engineer and weather engineer decided that it's not wet enough. We're still in the period where DRS can be used. As Jamie looking at the back of Nicky's just not close enough heading into turn 1. It would have to be a deep lunge from here if he wanted to get the move done, but decides against it. And now Nicky's starting to look ever closer to the back of that Renault in front of him. So as we've got Craig and Mike at the back sitting on the different tyres after their stop. So Craig on the super softs and Mike on for the harder compound of the soft compound tyres. And we'll look to see how long he can get those softs to last for, but it would be a stretch for them to last for essentially 25 laps. So as Nicky's gone wide, and does he keep it in a straight line? He just about keeps it going, but now it means Mystic, who seems to be really struggling through that sector, and now he's going to come under attack from Jamie going into turn 11. Does he get it slowed down? Jamie does. He pulls in. Mystic has nothing to do against it. Now what he needs to do is get the power down, get in the slipstream of that Force India. But we know how impressively good the Force Indias are in a straight line. And Jamie, with the DRS as well, isn't allowing the Renault to get any sort of drag off him. And we've got a yellow in Sector 1. And it is Craig, unfortunately, once again, who's lost it coming out of Turn 1 into Turn 2. So we'll go back on board as Mystic and Jamie still fighting over 4th and 5th position at the moment. And the Renault just looking at the back of the Force India, not not quite able to do anything about it at the moment. You can see blue patches of sky up there, the brakes in the clear dry race, or do we see the cloud cover coming over later in the race? It was forecasted that it would be a fully wet race, so will it be one of those tricky races where we do see rain falling but the drivers opting for the dry tyres? It's just not quite damp enough to warrant it moving over onto intermediates, and you can see the track just not looking slick enough yet for those intermediate compound tyres. Now what is impressive is these guys, especially on this compound on the wet-ish track, that haven't seen anyone massively track extending, especially through Sector 1 at the moment, which can be very, very, very easy to run over and miss a couple of apexes and run over the straight line. There's no gravel, there's no grass to kind of put you off, so it does punish you for cutting the corners. But fortunately for the drivers, if you do go over the runoff areas, you can make up for it, and you don't lose too much time. You'll just find yourself in trouble with the stewards after the race. And as we saw with Joel last week in Bahrain, he picked up that penalty on the last race of on the last lap of the race, and it ultimately lost him the race. So it's Mystic getting all out of shape there, coming out of the tight left-hander, and picks up the first penalty of the race, so that 3-second penalty running wide. And Nicky 9095, who lost control of the car coming out of turn 10, now starting to creep up to the back of the Renault. As Jamie, unfortunately, I've missed that, has jumped Mero D2. So Mero D2 had a 3-second lead, but he's been jumped as Scott picks up a 3-second time penalty, as Mystic Man comes into the pits and makes a pit stop. So does Craig 8728, who's currently sitting in 10th. Has not enjoyed the greatest of starts to this American Grand Prix. As Mystic comes in, it is a stop for the intermediate tyres. So Mystic, the first to go onto the green walled intermediate tyres that do shift a little bit of water, as Gamer picks up a 3-second time penalty. So he does have a 6-second lead over Joel, as you can see here, but Joel essentially drifting out of that corner there, trying to keep up with Gamer. But 3-second penalty there for Gamer, so he's not invincible tonight, and Joel needs to be consistent and stay well within those white lines. And currently the race is slightly spread out. After Jamie made the move on Mero, they're the closest at the moment with a 2.3-second lead. So Jamie really starting to pull away from Mero with 2.3 seconds over just over a lap. So it's the top 3 as of last week that are within the top 3 once again, with Gamer, Joel and Jamie all doing very well. And we'll look to see Mystic's pace on those intermediates if he's made the right decision. It does look at the moment like the guys are just about managing on the dry tyres, but the times aren't coming down too much at the moment. We're not seeing a track look like it's devolving into a wet surface, and there is a little bit of spray coming off the rear tyres. So it's all about whether these drivers decide to stay out. Can they just use those tyres to their advantage on this surface? As you can see, they're very, very twitchy coming out the corners. And as we go on board with Jamie here, coming up into turn 1, it's made a decent start. He very, very tentatively comes out of turn 1 there. Gamer's lead now up 7.2 seconds, so unless Joel has something to answer for very soon, it may be a case of, as we had earlier in the season in China, Gamer just romping away to victory. And that would put Gamer ahead. If it finished as it is, that would put Gamer ahead by 7 points heading into the final race of the season. So with 7 points of a lead, it would take a remarkable breakdown for him to lose that championship opportunity that he's got, that it looks like he may sew it up today. Well, sew it up, but not mathematically. So we're 7 laps in. Game of the Best currently sits at the top of the table in first place, followed by the Williams of Joel. Force India of Jamie 6328 have another strong race, pulling away from Mero, now 4 seconds away from the Red Bull in 4th. Nicky 9095 sits in 5th in the Haas, with Scott in the McLaren in 6th. Chill Nyland in the Haas in 7th, with the Renault of Mystic Man in 8th. Mike in the Ferrari is sitting in 9th, and Craig, after his 2 early pit stops, back on the ultra soft tyres, as we have a yellow in sector 3, and it is Craig once again who's gone off coming out of turn 12 and 13. So the Red Bull, Christian Horner, head in his hands when he's looking at the Scotsman who just can't get the car planted today, can't get the braking points right, and as you see there, just very, very tentative coming out as he comes into the pit lane once again. And is it an early exit for Craig in the Red Bull? Has he decided there must be, as he does, so Craig retiring from the race, so perhaps an issue underneath the car that we couldn't see, and requiring a new front wing. So an early exit for Craig 8728 in the Red Bull as they retire the car, possibly looking to save the engine if it wasn't an engine issue for the last race in Sepang next week. Mystic Man out there on the intermediate tyres. It seems like it's right on this cusp between the two. He's not suffering with tyre or with burning up those tyres too much. As I say that, he gets all out of shape, commentator's curse if you wish, all out of shape coming out of turn 6 and 7 there. So he's definitely out there persevering on those intermediates, hoping that the rain starts to come down a little bit heavier as we'll move further up. And it's Jamie 6328 who's now starting to come up to the back of Joel for 2nd position. So Joel now starting to come under attack from the Force India from behind. So this is going to be very, very interesting to see what Joel's approach is here. Does he look at possibly going early into the pit stops and going onto the soft tyre and running that to the end and trying to undercut as he does? So as I was just saying, Joel comes in, he realised that the Force India was closing in, and it's going to be an early stop for Joel, who comes in to take off those ultra softs that just burning out. Just the guys lighting them up with a lot of sliding and a little bit of torque steer and all sorts of mishaps coming out of corners will take a lot of life out of these purple walled ultra soft tyres. And it's intermediate tyres for the Williams, so the Williams gambling on those wet compound or the intermediate wet compound tyres. So we will see, is it time? Is it wet enough for it to affect these guys on the dry tyres? Because Currently it's a 15-second lead for Game of the Best in first position at the moment, but it's not really looking like it's affecting Gamer at all at the moment, who's just controlling the race from the front as the blue sky still breaking through those clouds. And currently we have an array of different strategies out there, with two guys out on the intermediates, Mike running around on the super softs after making his 2 stops, and then the rest still battling away on those ultra softs that they started the race on. So very interesting to see what happens. Does Joel seem to make up any time? He seems to be losing time to Scott at the moment, as we'll sit here and we'll just watch the time between Scott and Joel out on those intermediates, and he's losing time each sector there. So already on this lap he's lost 0.6 of a second. So was it the wrong call for the Williams garage and the Williams wall to come onto those intermediate tyres? It looked like potentially going onto a soft compound, maybe better the temperature, but they do tend to work better in colder conditions. So you'll find that if it is damp and raining, that the softer compound, or the harder compound, so the soft tyre in this case, would work slightly better in these damp conditions. Good evening, Fasco. Nice to have you watching the stream tonight. I'm not too bad. Yeah, feel free to let me know if you see anything that you want to sit on board with any of these drivers as they're going around, as Scott comes in, puts on the intermediate tyres, and Chill onto the soft. So as I was saying, Chill looking at staying on dry tyres but on the soft compound. So will we see better pace out of Chill's Haas or the guys that are currently on the intermediate tyres? We'll go down between Nicky and Mero, who are battling at the rear end of the grid, and looking like Mero's tyres are really going off, just really slow out of the corner there, and heading down out of turn 11. Mero really struggling to get the power down in that Red Bull, and he's going to come under threat pretty quickly from Nicky, who's got the DRS open. DRS still activated at the moment, as the Haas starting to really look at the back of the Red Bull, and Christian Horner on the team wall not wanting a double retirement from his Red Bull team after seeing Craig retire 2 laps ago after a unfortunate race of Craig where he just couldn't quite get it locked in for a lap every now and just. As we've got a yellow in sector 2, and it's Mystic Man 22 who's put it into the wall coming down out of turn 11, and it's very early on into the straight, so must have lit up those rear tyres on those intermediates, as Jamie 6328 picks up a 5-second stop go penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So really unfortunate there for Jamie, who's gonna really struggle with that when it comes later in the race. But it's Mystic who came in early and put on the intermediate tyres, and now we see cars all coming in. Mero D2 also goes for the intermediate tyres, but as Nicky equally go for the intermediate. So the top 2 stick with a dry compound of tyres. They stick with the soft compound, whereas the rest all looking at the intermediate. So was that a mistake from Mystic, or was it due to the fact that he just wasn't getting the grip off of those intermediates as they got hot, and the longer they're being used on a dry surface, they'll lose temperature, and they'll just essentially turn into a slick tyre and give you no grip whatsoever. And it's another unfortunate end for Mystic, who will pick up 0 points from today's race. So he'll sit on 34 points in 8th position, but most likely to be overtaken by Jamie, who's equal with him on 34 points. So Jamie, if he maintains his result tonight, will move up onto 44, so take him up to 7th position, sitting quite nicely behind the top 5 as they, or the top 6 as they battle for the championship victory. Game of the Best with an 18.5 second lead as Mystic leaves the session, obviously infuriated with his tyre choice and mistake there. And yeah, so very interesting for us going to see just how different the guys out there feel, that they were or weren't getting, or as you see Game of there getting all out of shape going out of the final turn, in really just about kept that Sauber from spearing into the wall. And we've seen in the past several Sauber drivers. Antonio Giovinazzi did it a few years ago in China, I want to say it was, where Giovinazzi was standing in and came out the final corner and in wet conditions just lit up the rear tyres and put it into the pit wall, and Gamer almost emulating it there. But even with that, is extending his lead. He's already taken a second out of Jamie this lap, so the soft compound definitely working for the Sauber driver at the moment. We'll go down through the grid. We'll see Joel is moved back up into third position on the intermediate tyres at the moment. The driver's quite spread out. We've only got a gap of Scott to Mero is coming down at 1.9 seconds, 2 seconds currently. Now Nicky 995, who came in, put on the intermediate tyres, has come back in. Dewey Sim moved back onto dry tyres. Is it a case of he's realised that the dry tyres are quicker than the wets? And it looks like it is a set. The soft compound tyres are going on. So Nicky, is it? So yeah, so it is. The yellow walled soft tyres there are going back on. So have these guys that come in for the intermediate realise that you can go out there on those dry tyres and make it work, as long as you get them as very tentatively back out there on those cold slick tyres on that damp track. So Nicky, sacrificing the fact that he was finishing down in 7th, hasn't really lost any positions there. And with Mike so far behind on the Supersofts, picking up a 5-second stop-go penalty equally. So another unfortunate session for Mike, who will pick up points, which is what he's looking for. He's just looking for a little bit more consistency later in the season. But definitely as we head towards next season, Mike will be looking at more of a challenge towards the front end of the grid. As we'll go up and we'll just check in with Scott in the McLaren, as he's starting to just about cut into the lead that Mero D2 had just ahead of him, and with 1.5 second lead now, with as Scott also comes in. And it looks like these guys that came in for the intermediate tyres are deciding that it is a dry race. It is pretty much the optimum tyre maybe for the dries, and it is a set the super soft tyres there for Scott. So Scott looking to take those super softs 15 laps towards the end. He'll have to be very careful on them, because like I said, even though in dry conditions you should be able to do that, you will be slipping and sliding and lighting up those tyres, especially the rears, so you'll have to make sure you're taking care of them. So what is the case when it comes to Mero and Joel, who are still out there on the intermediate tyres? And Mero now coming under attack from Chill, who's on the dry compounded tyres. And look at the grip difference there for the two. And Chill was just blasted past the Red Bull coming out of turn 11. And it must show the Red Bull driver that it's just not the tyre to be on. And even though that rain is coming down, that it's just not wet enough for the intermediates to move any water off of the surface. And the slick compound, even though it may be hard to keep it on the or keep it in a straight line, that it's worth the risk of staying on the dries for the speed, because Chill already, just 3 corners after getting that done, is already up by a second. So surely we'll see Mero coming into the pit lane shortly. So Gamer, his lead currently still sitting consistently around 19.5 seconds. Yeah, so the inters are burning up, and as you can see, Mero and Joel both coming back into the pit lane. It's going to be the soft tyre for... Oh, it's a super soft tyre for Joel, or soft tyre, you know, Formula 1 really helping with that. And the soft tyre for both of them. So yeah, so the soft tyre for Joel and for Mero, so that promotes Chill Nyland up into 3rd position in the Haas. So Joel may regret that extra stop well at the end of this race, as he's just dropping points to Gamer, who's up at the front and leading with no one around to challenge him. Or as you can see there, Mero just finding out where that grip is and He's going to need to get these softs up to temperature before he throws it into the same positions that he was when he was on those warmed up intermediate tyres. Just needs to spend a lap just perhaps braking a little bit earlier and just making sure that he doesn't go into any of these sweeping corners that can really catch you out, and just running wide and running onto the red painted runoff area. It can be very slippery around COTA. Not quite the grippy surface that we see around Paul Ricard with the runoff area grip zone, due to the fact that it's the testing circuit for Pirelli. This red paint is absolutely lethal when wet, so you want to be staying on the tyres. As we see Scott and Joel there swapping positions, so Scott on the super soft tyres swapping positions with Joel, so Joel falling back once again into 5th position. So as I was saying earlier, if Gamer wins, Joel needs to finish 7th or higher. So if Joel continues this trajectory downwards, he will be finding that the title is just out of reach when it comes to the next week in Malaysia. And currently he'll only be picking up 6 championship points, so as Mike picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. So now we'll let's see if Joel, does he come back at Scott? He does have the pace on it. Does he get it slowed down in time? You can hear the brakes being locked up heading into turn 1. Very easy to lock the brakes into turn 1 here, and especially with the conditions. Scott's tyres down the soft. Oh, as you can see, the McLaren really struggling to get it around turn 5 there, and that's allowed Joel to stay with him. And it's the Williams just about staying on the back of the McLaren Honda, heading down into turn 11. And does the Williams look at a lunge? He doesn't. He stays in. He's going to stay tight in the gearbox of the McLaren. Just sit in the slipstream and hope to get that move done into turn 12 down the fastest point of the circuit. The DRS opens, and we've got a yellow in sector 3, and I believe that may be for Mike, who's taking all sorts of lines around the circuit there, and Mike just deciding that he didn't need to take that part of the corner. It's much easier to straight line it, and the Ferrari driver currently sitting at the back on the super soft tyres that will probably be starting to go off now. He came onto them quite early in the race, so he will be starting to lose grip, as we'll go back on board with Scott here, who's been overtaken. I've done it once again. I've come off the screen just as Joel retook 4th position from Scott, so I do apologise for missing the overtake on these two once again. That's incredibly poor of me. But now it's time for the McLaren to attack the rear end of the Williams once again. But Scott looking like he's not as close as Joel was previously, so it's all about consistency for these guys. They need to make sure that they're just keeping it online. They're just making sure that they're keeping the... Oh, as you see just how tricky it is for these guys. They're just... Scott ever so slightly kicking the rear end out of that McLaren, and you can see how much time it's cost him. Over a second and a half he's lost already to the Williams, and unfortunately for him that means that he's going to be outside of DRS come turn 11, which might be a bit of a reprieve to Joel, who currently sitting 10 seconds ahead, or 10 seconds behind Chill. So unlikely to see Joel attack for the podium once more, as Gamer's lead is now stretched out to just under 30 seconds. So Gamer the best currently in an absolute class of his own when it comes to this race. Just listening to the stadium announcer here, just telling us some inane facts about the circuit. The circuit actually, with the amphitheatre that's being built within the grounds of COTA, is actually having a football stadium built next to it for the new Austin football team to be playing there from next season. They'll be entering the United States Soccer League, so that's the 2nd tier in American football. So COTA definitely evolving as the years go on, and the fact they hold a concert here every time there's a race to bring more fans in. And you roughly see around 250,000 American fans from all over the states, and fits in with Austin's absolutely unbelievable feeling. And if you've never had a chance to go to Austin, I implore you to put it on the list. You wouldn't think that you'd want to go there, but it's an absolutely unbelievable circuit. It's an unbelievable city. I was lucky enough to spend 3 years of my life living over in America, and Austin was one of the best places to visit, one of the best places to go. So if you do have a chance of going to COTA, definitely take up that option, because it is a cracking city with a awesome vibe, and you get to be treated to some brilliant Formula 1 racing at the same time. Now, whilst the gaps in between the drivers are relatively stable, currently the closest we've got at the moment is 1.7 between Scott and Joel. Just take time to let you know about the other races that we have here in Invictus going on this week. So tomorrow night we have the American Grand Prix in the Performance League, and it's the Boogster, Nick LJ Thompson and Wave Intel that are still looking at battling out for the championship. And with the Boogster hopefully returning for this race, it should be very interesting to see if he can reclaim the top step, which has been currently assumed by Wave Intel after last week. So join Craig and me and myself in the commentary box tomorrow night, where we will be covering the Performance League. And then on Wednesday it is F1 and F2 that you can find here on Twitch. So check out our Twitter, where you'll find all the links to the live streams and the commentators, and you can follow F1 and F2, and then the results for F3 will be shown after the race, and you can find out how close to the title Betrayer has managed to get. Oh, fast going. So Boog's down for another week. So very, so it's going to be impressive to see if Wave Intel can maintain another challenge. We've got a yellow in sector 1 and 2. Very briefly, as it's your guess is as good as mine. Oh, it's a Red Bull, and it looks like it might be Mero. It is. So Mero struggling there. His Gamer the best. It's the fastest lap with 1:49.2. So Gamer on those not even new softs, starting to set faster times there. And heading back to what I was saying previously, and also guys, we are a volunteer run league, so if you do have any spare change, please feel free to head over to our website at invictusracingleagues.com, where you can donate for anything possible, or go to our store where you can buy any branded and customized Invictus merchandise, including hats, t-shirts, and all sorts, mugs. So yeah, it's definitely in the early stages of growth, but we're hoping we can become one of the best esport racing leagues out there for Formula 1 and trailblaze the European side of Formula 1 esports. Of course, you can find us on Invictus RL on Twitter. That's where you'll find all the updates for all the leagues that we have through Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, and find out a little bit more about the drivers, as we're just on board here with Merid E2, who's the drivers all seeming to struggle. As we've got a yellow in sector 3, and it's Mike who seems to have lost it coming out of turn 12 into turn 13, sitting on the star as he lets the leaders through. Mike unfortunately now a lap down, and not a race to remember for the Ferrari driver. And just whilst we have time, we'll sit on board with our race leader, and we'll go on board with him and do a lap round COTA with Game of the Best, as he comes up into turn 1, gets the car stopped, locks up the front right hand tyre, gets nicely run over the apex over turn 1. It's a short dash into turn 2, which turns into 3, 4, 5 in rapid succession. You can see not on full gas here, just taking it easy and as he runs through into turn 6. As you can see just how much he's feathering that throttle pedal down through turn 7, 8 and 9. Runs over the kink of turn 10, braking down into 64 mile an hour into turn 11. Now get straightened up, open up the throttle up into rich mix as he flies down the straight, hitting a top speed of around 199 miles an hour, braking down right down to running over to the apex on turn 12 into turn 13. This is the stadium section of 14 and 15 here. Now, very hard corner turn 15. You can find yourself getting a little bit sideways coming out of it. It's very easy to light up those rear tyres, and it's all about concentration when it comes to turn 16, 17 and 18, and absolutely on the money for the Sauber driver. Just kisses the apex of turn 19 there, and just now onto the final corner at turn 20, and that was a lap on board with Game of the Best around the circuit of the Americas with a fastest lap of 1:49.1, so Gamer going even faster. That's a 35-second lead currently for Gamer. The fact that he's getting quicker is going to be demoralising for the rest of the grid, who are just be trying to get those soft tyres to live a little bit longer, and seeing the fact that Gamer's just getting quicker and quicker, and it looks like he's going to absolutely run away with this victory, and it would have to be a absolute disaster for the Sauber driver if he wasn't to pick up a win by quite a considerable distance tonight. Equally, Jamie 6328 sitting in second position at the moment, has got a huge gap back to Chill Nyland in third. And Chill's gap now back to Joel was 10 seconds. I did say that Joel would struggle to get up to the back of Chill, but he's now down to 3.8. So the man that doesn't give up, Joel V520, is doing it. And with 7 laps left to go, Joel is definitely getting himself in the position where he may be challenging the rear end of Chill heading into the latter stages in this race. And of course, earlier in the race, we did lose Mystic due to a crash into the barrier on the exit of turn 11, sorry, as he got on the power for the main straight. And unfortunately, the Red Bull team retired Craig 8728's car in the pit lane after a lot of issues for him earlier in the race, which saw him make a couple of pit stops, and a jump start for Mike and Craig was really unfortunate and kind of really set back the cars earlier in the race, as Joel now 2.9 seconds behind Chill, so he can see the rear end of that Haas as they go down, as Nicky picks up a 3-second time penalty. So Joel starting to close down on the Haas. You can see him, and he'll certainly smell blood in the water when it comes to third position. He'll know that he desperately needs points if he's to stay in this championship hunt, with Gamer winning by an absolutely monumental margin. So he needs to make sure that he stays within a couple of positions of Gamer, with Gamer currently picking up 12 points, which will put him on 78 points, and currently Gamer Joel only picking up 7, which will put him on to 68 points. So it's potentially elementary when it comes to the last race that Gamer will just need to finish within the top 5, no matter of where Joel finishes. As we go, 6 laps left to go, so we feel like Joel, who seems to have been involved in the last couple of races with some late race battles, and looks like he's trying to get himself involved in another one, as the Williams starting to hunt down that Haas driver. It's Joel that's just seeming to get a little bit more out of these soft compound tyres. Of course, As you see, I believe that's the Ferrari there getting out of the way as he's being lapped by these two. He is. Unfortunate for Joel, he came in and had that stint on the intermediate tyres, and the race the track just was not ready for the intermediates. It just didn't work for these guys. Of course, there was several drivers tried it. Nicky, Mero, Joel all tried the intermediates and just couldn't get it, and just wasn't quite, as you see, Joel really struggling to get the power down out of turn 13 there. As he comes out of 15, he's still 1.2 seconds behind, so looking at getting within DRS heading into the last corner. It's 1.1 second now, so he's really closing up to the Haas. So Chill is going to come under real threat as he is now within that 1 second window. Do we see that flap open at the rear end of the Williams? It's not quite yet, as Scott picks up a 3 second time penalty. Back on those super soft tyres, which will probably be starting to go off now. He's been on them for a while, but of course these guys lighting up those tyres coming out of a lot of these corners as Mike pits in for a set of the ultra soft tyres late in the race. So do we see Mike attempt to go for his late race the fastest lap that he likes to attack, or quite a few races so far this season? We'll stay on board here with Joel, and we'll go on board with the Williams driver as he looks at the rear end of the Haas, and you can see how heavy that rain's coming down, but it's just not wet enough for the intermediates. It's just not been working for those guys. And Chill very tentatively coming out of turn 11 there. Joel, he's going to need a really good tow going down the long straight as the DRS is open. He saw him flick the switch on his steering wheel. He gets it slowed down, and it's a slightly better entry into turn 12 for Joel, and he's now just over half a second away from the Haas driver. And we could see a change of position for the podium as they head into 3 laps left to go, as they both do well to not light the rear tyres up too early coming out of turn 15 there. And it's all about, you can hear just how lightly they're feathering that throttle heading around the elongated right-hander. Get it slowed down into the left-hander at turn 19 and turn 20. Both of them very, very, very deftly on that brake pedal, not wanting to lock up the front tyres at all. Joel now he's going to have to get brave towards the end of this as he takes a tighter line into turn 1 than Chill. Oh, because a little bit of snap oversteer there as he comes out of turn 1. He's going to have to watch out for the dirty air of the Haas. He doesn't want to pick up a time penalty like he has done last week where it lost him the win. So it's, as you see there, he had to correct just before the corner to make sure that he didn't run over the apex. But he looks to have had a much better run than Chill going into turn 10 as they come out of the kink of turn 10. Oh, as Joel gets all out of shape there, but does he make a dive down the inside? No, he's going to stay behind the Haas driver and hope to use that boost of DRS as they go down the long straight. But Joel just getting all out of shape coming out of the turn. The DRS is opened. He's going to get that lovely extra bit of slipstream as he goes down into turn 12. Does he make a late lunge into it? It's going to have to be very brave. He takes the inside. Chill's going to stay on the outside, but Chill doesn't have anything to come back at him with unless he takes the tighter line. He does, but Joel's going to have the inside line as we go into turn 15. Oh, it's going to be very brave there for Jill, but Joel maintains the racing line and keeps that position. Now back onto the podium. So these two are going to trade positions, and it's Chill who makes an absolutely fantastic move down into turn 19, into turn 20, takes back third position as we go on to the 26th lap, or 25th lap, sorry. Oh, as the Williams takes a diving lunge up into turn 1, and these two still side by side as we head down into turn 2. Someone's got to give as we head down into turn 3. It has to. You cannot go side by side around these two. It will be absolute. Oh, as you see the Haas running across, and it is Chill that has to pull out the move, and Joel takes third position after the two battled side by side. No one could work out who was going to pick up third, who was going to take fourth. And currently, unless Chill's got anything to come back at him with, it is Joel who made up that 10 seconds on the Haas driver and takes back a step on the podium. It's 7/10 of a second, so he will get DRS going down this long straight into turn 12. It's 5/10 of a second, 6/10 of a second, so Chill just not quite close enough to lunge into the corner as Joel did very, very bravely into turn 1, just threw it up the inside. He knew that he needed to, Daniel Ricciardo style, just send it if he was going to get it done, as Chill, like he did last lap, looking at lunging into turn 15, just can't quite get it done, and he's going to get himself caught in the dirty air and that turbulent air of the Williams in front, so he doesn't want to get out of shape and run offline like he did earlier in the race. And Chill just staying behind the Williams and hoping to get the move done, possibly into turn 1 just as Joel did, but he may be just a little bit too far behind, and it is just over a second now, so he was just within DRS. So is Chill now starting to lose a little bit of time to Joel, so looks like the battle may be over, as up in the lead, Game of the Best currently sitting with a 49-second lead, so with 3 laps left to go, the 26th, 27th and 28th, and the time going up, we could potentially see as Joel does pick up that late game penalty, and that's what we were talking about earlier in the race. Joel just needed to make sure that he didn't pick up a penalty late in the race, and his worst nightmare has come true once again as he picks up a penalty with 2 laps left to go. And Joel potentially losing out to Chill for the podium. We'll have to see what happens when it comes with penalties at the end of the race. I can't remember if I've missed any for Chill, but currently Joel's going to have to be on his best behaviour for the stewards. Yeah, so Sarge, he did indeed. He wanted to get that move done. He just threw it up the inside going into turn 1, and Joel, he's made a habit of it recently of being very racy up the front of the grid, and Joel V520 absolutely getting the move done pretty impeccably going up the hill, and I don't think Chill was expecting it. He knew that Joel was behind him, but I'm not quite sure he was expecting him to send it from that far behind. There's Meredy and Scott trading positions with 2 laps left to go, 4th, 5th and 6th position. It's Mero who's made up the position on Scott. Scott looking to come back at him going into turn 1. Mero's gone very defensive early into the corner, and that does mean that Scott will get a better run coming out of turn 1 into turn 2, but following cars through the complex of 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 is very tricky. And yeah, as you see there, Scott just pulling back a little bit there. He didn't want to get caught in too much dirty air of the Red Bull in front. But he needs to stay within that DRS detection as we head towards turn 11 and going down the main straight into turn 12. Game of the Best currently on the final lap, heading through the first sector, not too far behind the guys battling over 5th and 6th at the moment, so that shows just how fast game has been today as he heads down into turn 11 down the long straight. Game of the Best has been absolutely flawless today, as we've got a yellow in Sector 1 and Sector 2. It may be for Mike, it is for Mike in the Ferrari, and unfortunately it's been a bit of a scrappy race for the Ferrari driver, who will pick up 8th position, so will pick up 3 points, so will be useful for Mike, but unfortunately he's not been anywhere near the level of this man today, and that's Game of the Best 262, who's going to pick up another victory. That means out of all of the races he's been in, so far he's yet to be off of the first or second step of the podium. It's going to be his 4th race victory of the season, after picking up victory in China, Canada and Bahrain. But Game of the Best crosses the line, and he will win the American Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas by an absolutely monumental margin of 53.1 seconds to Jamie 6328, who potentially may even fall further back with penalties, as Jamie now coming through the 3rd sector as he enters the stadium section at turn 14 and 15. And the Force India just coasting, looking at picking up his 2nd consecutive 2nd position. So after picking up his first podium last week, he'll be absolutely 10 points heading his way in the championship, as Jamie comes out of turn 19 into turn 20, and the Force India will slowly coast across the line, and it's Jamie that picks up 2nd position in the Force India, and he'll be followed by Joel, who has done an absolutely cracking job to come back after making that early mistake, being on intermediate tyres, to come back on the softs, make the charge back, overtake Chill, as Joel will cross the line and provisionally take 3rd position, with Chill not far behind. Does he jump Joel? No, he doesn't. So Joel maintains 3rd position. Chill will take 4th. Mero D2 is currently crossing the line in 5th position, and Scott, that's Boy Better Know, will come across in 6th, and Nicky in 9095 is the last one on this lap to cross the line, and the Haas driver crosses and picks up potentially 7th place. It is 7th place. Looked like he jumped on the screen there, but it is 7th place for Nicky. So another tough race there for Nicky, who, like I said, was leading the championship standings up until we went to Japan, and where he's had two DNFs, a 9th position and now a 7th position. So Nicky's championship challenge really derailed late in the season there. So really unfortunate for the McLaren driver, as Game of the Best picks up another winner's trophy, sprays the champagne across the Sauber crew and the cameraman for good luck, as you see the Sauber team not knowing how lucky they are to have Game of the Best, their number 1 driver for the season, joined on the podium by Jamie 6328 and Joel V520. And there is your race for today, and it is Gamer that picks up the victory in 52 minutes and 7 seconds from 6th on the grid, with Jamie in 2nd, Joel in 3rd, Chill the only one to not pick up any time penalties, so congratulations to him in 4th, Mero in 5th, Scott in 6th, Nicky in 7th, Mike in 8th, and then we lost Craig and we lost Mystic Man 22 earlier in the race. And it is Game of the Best that picks up the fastest lap of the race. We're 149.1, so Game of the Best pretty much dominated from start to finish. Started in 6th place, made it up to 2nd after the first lap, got the move done on Joel into the 2nd lap, and after that pretty much cruised away from everyone else and really deserved the victory today. And the Sauber team will be absolutely delighted with him, and that puts him up onto 78 points as we head into the final race of the season next week in Sepang, Malaysia, with Joel sitting on 69 points. So Game of the Best there, only needing 4 points, I believe, to take the championship. So it's going to be possibly a tour of victory for the Sauber driver next week out in Sepang. He just needs to make sure that he gets a top 5 finish to take the championship for this season. But credit to Joel for making sure that the championship goes down to the final race of the season. That's what we always like to see in Invictus, the close battles all up and down the grid. And to Jamie6328, who today picked up another second position there and really drove a decent race tonight to make sure that he picked up some decent points. So a great race throughout in very difficult conditions, with the guys having to use those dry tyres on the slightly damp track that wasn't quite ready for the intermediates, and the guys that tried to use the intermediates really found out just how tricky it was, and they were burning those inters out just a little bit too quickly. But unfortunately, that's how it goes occasionally, and you have to make the gamble. It just didn't pay off. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But of course, that is racing. But for tonight, that's me done for the No Assist League. Like I said earlier, you can join me and Craig tomorrow night in the commentary box for the Performance League, where you will see some absolutely superb racing, some really, really quick guys. And then on Wednesday, you can find F1 and F2 on Twitch, and the results for F3 will be on Twitter, posted later in that evening. And that will be the penultimate race of the season done, as we head to Sepang in Malaysia next week for the final race of the season and the final race on F1 2017. So feel free to join us there, and we look forward to having you on the stream, in the comments, and getting involved. But for tonight, thank you for joining me. It's been good to have you. It's good to speak to you. But until next week, good night.